Crash happened about 2 a.m. this morning near a rest stop on I-70, again near Highland. ISP tell us the Greyhound bus hit 3 semi-trucks that were parked in the off-ramp of this rest stop on westbound I-70, and I-70 has been closed while first responders landed air ambulances on the highway itself. Again, we understand 3 people inside that bus are dead, with 4 more flown from the scene and 10 more rushed to local hospitals by ambulance. Now, ISP tell us that no one in those trucks was injured. We have reached out to Greyhound this morning as well to find out where this bus was coming from, where it was going, and how many people total were on board. And as we give you a look back here at the roads, now westbound traffic has been backed up here for quite a while. In the last half hour or so, they've started to divert some of this traffic that had been backed up off of the highway. But again, the highway is still closed when we get up here to this next exit near Route 143. And again, this is mostly trucks driving along this major thoroughfare between St. Louis and Indianapolis. And we'll continue to get you the latest information as it breaks here on the air and on the KMOV News app. We're live here in Highland. Alex Gall, News 4.
3 people were killed and more than a dozen others injured in a horrific Greyhound bus crash overnight in southern Illinois. Alexis Zotos from our CBS affiliate KMOV reports 14 passengers were transported to area hospitals.
It was just before 2 a.m. when Illinois State Police say a Greyhound bus traveling from Indianapolis to St. Louis crashed into 3 tractor trailers parked along a highway exit to a rest area. Images show the bus's entire right side ripped open.
In front of me was a man stuck between the seats, like his whole body was folded.
At least 3 people were killed, 14 others seriously injured, including the bus driver. 4 had to be evacuated by helicopter. The scene so bad, all westbound lanes of the highway were closed for several hours.
I woke up in the air. When my brain registered what I was doing, I was floating.
David Chernow had been asleep inside his truck for hours when the bus slammed into it. He immediately got out and started helping.
I got 5 people out through the window. I ran to my truck and got the fire extinguisher, and I put the fire out. And then I got the last pregnant lady out the window with one of the other guys that had climbed out earlier.
The NTSB is now investigating this deadly accident. Right now, we know that in Illinois, it is actually illegal for trucks to park on an exit ramp, but many drivers do, as it's difficult to find overnight parking. Nora.
Alexis Zotos, thank you.
News 4 Investigates is the first to obtain 911 calls from last week's deadly Greyhound bus crash. Listen as that bus rammed a semis at that station.
911, where's your emergency?
I am parked at the rest area. I don't know if you can get this emergency service, but a Greyhound bus just lost the wheel and went right into my trailer. Okay. We have a lot of people that are dead.
You have a lot of what?
We need emergency services now.
Well, now the victims of that fatal bus crash are suing Greyhound. At least 2 of the injured passengers are involved in that lawsuit. News 4's Deion Broxton joins us live from the Greyhound station in downtown St. Louis with a closer look at the newly filed legal action. Deion.
Corey, when that bus crash happened last week, 6 people at the scene were able to take a bus from the scene and come here to the St. Louis Greyhound station downtown. Now, one guy said that Greyhound offered him money to not sue, and he took that money. While the lawyers we talked to said there still might be a legal path going forward for that guy and others like him.
Our clients are still in active treatment trying to figure out the extent of their injuries.
Brady McInich and John Hipskin are now representing 2 individuals injured in last week's Greyhound bus crash near Highland, Illinois.
We're unwilling to disclose their identities at this point. As you might imagine, the families are grieving.
These lawyers plan to take on Greyhound in court once federal and state investigators wrap up probes into what led a Greyhound driver to collide with semis at an I-70 rest stop.
Once their investigation's complete, we'll pick up our investigation and determine whether or not there's any other entities that need to be added to the lawsuit.
3 people died and 14 were injured in the crash, but another 6 left the scene without getting checked out by doctors. Edward Alexander is one of those who walked away from the wreckage.
I woke up, slide through the aisle, Got up, nose was leaking. Got a little back injuries, but at the same time, I really didn't want to go to the hospital. I'm trying to get back to Arkansas to my kids.
Alexander revealed to News 4 that Greyhound made an offer to him and the 5 others when they arrived at the downtown St. Louis station.
Of course, they're trying to keep us from suing them, so they offered $2,500. Yeah, I took it.
This is not just a fender bender at the Emo's parking lot. This is a major multi-billion-dollar corporation that, as we've heard and as you've told us, is already trying to offer settlements to people without them even knowing the extent of the injuries. And I encourage anybody that accepted some money already or thought that they might have settled it to at least call an attorney. There's a good chance that they could actually get you out of that deal because it's just not right.
We reached out to Greyhound for a comment and they didn't get back to us in time for this story. The NTSB said this investigation could take up to 2 years, so it might be a while before we see any lawsuits filed. Live in downtown St. Louis, Deion Broxton, News 4.
News 4 investigator Susan Elcori, she has been researching safety on Greyhound buses. Susan, what can you tell us?
Well, we're learning Greyhound has a history of crashes. We found federal records showing in the past 2 years there have been 69 reported crashes, which boils down to more than 2 a month. Of those 69 crashes, 2 were deadly. The feds also flagged Greyhound for not always following the rules when it comes to how long their drivers have been on the road. They rank it on a 0 to 100 scale, with 0 being the ideal standard. Greyhound measures out at just 51, which puts them right above the threshold for being flagged, meaning federal regulators believe they've seen recent violations, making Greyhound a priority for intervention actions and roadside inspections. While we don't know what caused this crash, we are learning there have been questions around Greyhound driver safety for years. Today, we talked to a lawyer who's represented multiple people in lawsuits against Greyhound. One was a 2018 crash in New Mexico where 8 people died. He believes the company needs to do more when it comes to making sure drivers are okay on the road.
We want the companies to make sure that fatigued drivers, impaired drivers, intoxicated drivers aren't behind the wheel of a bus or the cockpit of an airplane. And so it shouldn't be incumbent on a passenger to investigate whether their driver is capable and fully rested to drive that bus. We have to rely on Greyhound to do that, and I just don't think it's happening.
We've reached out to Greyhound multiple times today. They keep telling us that they don't have any new information about the crash, and they haven't answered our questions about driver safety. Something else we're trying to find out, did the bus have seatbelts? They're not required on buses, and Greyhound does not necessarily have to have those seatbelts on there. We do know that they have them on some of their buses, but not all of them. That's certainly something we're going to keep looking into. Susan Elcori, News 4 Investigates.
Week marks 3 months since a Greyhound bus crashed into trucks parked along a rest stop ramp in Illinois, killing 3 people. That crash putting a spotlight on a deadly highway hazard, trucks parking often illegally for what's supposed to be a safety stop, and it's all because of a national parking shortage.
Investigator Susan Elcori gets a first-hand look at how often it is happening in the St. Louis region and what is being done to curb this problem.
When the sun sets, there's a shift in speed on interstates.
It's a disaster.
As truck drivers race to find parking.
There's no telling if there's going to be parking available.
Without enough spots, they're making their own on ramps. Some stopping where signs clearly say they can't.
I mean, it's really dangerous.
Others creating lines so long they extend onto the highway.
But there is no parking.
But stopping here can be risky.
Number 1, where's your emergency?
A Greyhound bus just lost the wheel and went right into my trailer.
July 12th, 2023.
We have a lot of people that are dead.
A Greyhound bus went off the road at the I-70 Silver Lake rest stop in Highland, Illinois.
There are very many people in the
parked along the shoulder.
Some can't get out in their traffic.
14 people were injured.
Man, it's bad. It's bad.
3 died.
I woke up sliding through the aisle. I seen a body hanging out the window.
3 months later, Illinois State Police and federal investigators haven't said what caused the crash. A survivor and a family who lost their loved one are suing Greyhound and the tractor-trailer drivers parked on the ramp. While the danger is clear, parking problems aren't slowing down. The latest numbers from the federal government estimates in 2020 there were 30,000 crashes involving trucks on the shoulder or roadside. Of those, 457 were deadly. First Alert 4 Investigates hit the road to see how often it's happening in the St. Louis region. We spent hours on the interstate from nightfall to early morning. It didn't take long to see dozens of trucks forming lines on ramps.
It was off the road enough to take a break here.
And stopping where they know it's illegal.
Just wanted to know about why you stopped on the shoulder.
Oh, that's all right. Because I seen the other trucks, so that usually means there ain't no parking on the rest areas.
Drivers we asked don't see an easy solution.
No matter where you go, you're fighting for parking.
Terry McFadden has spent 10 years traveling across the country.
I mean, I got here and I had to play the make your own parking game. Fortunately, I stayed up until this spot cleared out.
Federal law requires truckers to take breaks. Starting in 2017, big rigs had to install electronic logs, which sends their times directly to the U.S. Department of Transportation.
You're out of hours. It's either take the guaranteed spot back on the ramp or roll through, find that there isn't any parking, and then how far do you got to go to find parking again?
State laws on parking vary. In Illinois, it's illegal to park overnight on highway shoulders. But in other states, it's legal, including in Missouri.
As long as you're off of the main traveled portion of the roadway, you can stop on the shoulder of the roadway.
Corporal Dallas Thompson with Missouri State Highway Patrol says they're seeing more trucks on the road, and with it, more making their own parking spots.
Is it a safety concern?
Well, absolutely. We're always worried about the safety aspect of it, but as long as they're staying in compliance with the law, there's not a whole lot we can do to change anything right now.
Parking is so scarce, the trucking industry estimates there's one spot for every 11 truckers. Illinois Congressman Mike Bost thinks he has the solution.
It's vitally important that we do move this bill.
He proposed a bipartisan bill to dedicate $755 million for states to expand rest stops or build new ones.
If your bill does pass, how long would it take to get enough spots?
Oh my goodness. Well, we get it passed, we're still talking 15 years.
What do we do for safety in the time being?
Yeah, it's up to the individual drivers to try to be as safe as they possibly can. Try to work with law enforcement. It is urgent, but trying to wake people up to it and get this bill across the finish line. There's other things that are pending here and other people are focusing on other things, but we can do both chew gum and walk, and we should be able to move this.
Our cameras captured this months later in the same area as the I-70 rest stop where the deadly Greyhound crash happened. Semis cover both sides of the ramp and back onto the highway.
I personally don't park on ramps, on and off ramps ever, but I understand why guys do. What's he supposed to do? What else can he do?
We looked into how often enforcement is happening in Illinois, where parking on the shoulder and ramps of highways is illegal. ISP says from the beginning of the year to July 14th, there were 9 citations and 12 written warnings. We asked the state police director about this. His office said they're not talking about it. Why? Because the Greyhound bus crash is still under investigation. A spokesman told us their system makes it difficult to track enforcement, which is why they gave us a limited time period for enforcement. Susan L. Corey, First Alert 4 Investigates.